to it. All right. Good evening. We're going to get started with the regular session of the Hemet City Council meeting. Sarah, can I have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Brown?
Here.
Councilmember Rosa?
Here.
Councilmember Wright? Here. Mayor Pro Tem Meyer?
Here.
Mayor Person?
Here. If you could please stand with me and then remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. Mary Rydesdale with the Hemet Senocino Interfaith Council to do the invocation, and then the pledge led by Russ Brown.
Good evening, and thank you for attending. O thou, forgiving Lord, these servants are turning to thy kingdom and seeking thy grace and bounty. O God, make their hearts good and pure in order that they may become worthy of thy love. Purify and sanctify the spirits, that light the sun of reality may shine upon them. Purify and sanctify the eyes, that they may perceive thy light. Purify and sanctify the ears, in order that they may hear the call of thy kingdom. O Lord, verily we are weak, but thou art mighty. Verily we are poor, but thou art rich. We are seekers, and thou art the one sought. O Lord, have compassion upon us and forgive us. Bestow upon us such capacity and receptiveness that we may be worthy of thy favors and become attracted to thy kingdom, that we may drink deep of the water of life, may be enkindled by the fire of thy love, and be resuscitated through the breaths of thy Holy Spirit in this radiant century. O God, my God, cast upon this gathering the glances of thy loving kindness. Keep safe each and all in thy custody and under thy protection. Send down upon these souls thy heavenly blessings. Immerse them in the ocean of thy mercy, and quicken them through the breaths of the Holy Spirit. O Lord, bestow thy gracious aid and confirmation upon this just government. This country lieth beneath the sheltering shadow of thy protection, and this, the people, is in thy service. O Lord, confer upon them thy heavenly bounty, and render the outpourings of thy grace and favor copious and abundant. Suffer this esteemed nation to be held in honor, and enable it to be admitted into thy kingdom. Thou art the powerful, the omnipotent, the merciful. Thou art the generous, the beneficent, the Lord of grace abounding. So says Abdul Baha.
Please join me in pledge of allegiance to our nation's flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. You may be seated. Okay, up first, item 3, public employee evaluation. Mr. City Attorney.
Mayor, this was on our 6 o'clock session. Council ran out of time to go into closed session due to the Hemet Fire Department Community Risk Assessment Standards of Coverage Study, which took the entire work study. So this will be held over until the end for you to decide whether you're going to go into closed session or continue. That concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Up next is the consent calendar. This is items that are routine in nature and take one vote. Sarah, are there any members of the public wish to pull anything? Are there any staff that wishes to pull anything? Council?
I'm going to pull number 6.
6. Any others?
Number 9.
Number 9. Any others? Okay. Seeing none, can we get a vote to approve on 4, 5, 7, 8, 10, and 11?
So moved.
Second.
All right, please vote. Okay, that passes. Unanimous. Number 6.
Number 6 is our investment portfolio, and I still don't have information. I don't have updates on our RFQ. I don't have a call back from the city attorney. It's almost been 2 years now, so we're just sitting stagnant, watching our money.
That's right, Council Member. I will call you tomorrow.
Is that all you have for that? Okay. Can I get a motion to approve for receive and file? Okay.
Move approval, receive and file.
All right, please vote. Item number 9, Russ.
Yeah, I asked to pull this item just to comment about the value that it represents. This is an annual event that has been actively promoted throughout the state of California for many years, and I believe that local government has a duty and a leadership responsibility to promote and actually participate in these kinds of events and preparedness efforts. Many of our local businesses and planned development communities and individuals have actively participated in this event annually, and municipal governments pretty routinely do not, other than just recognize the event. And I have to admit that participating in the drop, cover, and hold, you may feel a little foolish at 10:18, stopping what you're doing and taking that action. But I have a firm belief that how we practice is how we perform. First responders recognize the value of that kind of training, and I think the same concept carries over into non-first responders. So I think if we're going to promote this and actively participate, that we should do exactly that. And so I'm advocating that we all take this seriously wherever we are on October 18th at 10:18, and you might plan ahead and maybe be in the restroom or the break room where you don't feel so foolish doing that. But I wholeheartedly support active participation in this annual event.
So is that a motion?
A motion to approve.
I'll second that. Please vote. All right, that passes. Up next, communication from the public. Sarah, do you have people that wish to speak?
Yes, I have Michael Madrid, and he'll be followed by Philip Young. I'm sorry, it's Michael Madrid.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor Percival and all of the City Council. I'm here to offer an invitation and let the City Council know about the 20th anniversary celebration of the Human Relations Council of the Hemet, San Jacinto, and Menifee region. And it's certainly a very joyful time for our community, an opportunity for us to continue the work of the Human Relations Council, which is to promote harmony among all of the citizenry, to help increase understanding of all cultures, ethnicities, and faiths and other diversity that we find in our community. And so we'll have that opportunity on Wednesday, the 24th of October. I will leave some flyers here for all of you, and you have our personal invitation. I hope that you can send representatives to the event, which will be held at the Golden Era Golf Clubhouse at 6 p.m. on Wednesday, October the 24th. And again, we appreciate the city's support that you've offered over the years. We will be giving community service awards that evening to Reverend James Hall, the Saboba Foundation, and Hemet Community Medical Group. So you can read about that on our flyers. So it's a great chance for community-wide celebration.
Thank you for having us in the evening.
You're welcome. Yes, I hope you can come and enjoy dinner with us.
Thank you very much. Up next,
Philip Young.
good evening, sir.
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, esteemed council members. My name is Philip Young. I'm a teacher right here for Hemet Unified. I'm a grant writer and a project developer for a 501c3 organization. I'm a resident in East Hemet, California. I'm currently developing education and community projects in Hemet, East Hemet, and Val Vista in partnership with local businesses, including Polly's Pies and KFC. I would appreciate a letter of support from the council members to show the people that you guys are behind them, I'm behind you, they're behind me, so big family. And especially those who preside over District 5 would be much appreciated. With successful initiatives, I'm looking to move into project developments that promote economic development in the San Jacinto Valley, and I would love to get a lead or contact with the city manager as well. Thank you.
Awesome, thank you so much. Only 2 speakers tonight? All right, we got off easy. Okay, moving along. Our first discussion action item number 12, 5G small cell wireless status update, XG Communications.
Good evening, Mayor,
Brought it on
Council.
to Raja people.
Say that 5 times fast, huh? So, as you may recall, in September of last year, we entered into a wireless marketing agreement with 5 Bars, who is now known as XG Communities, trying to get ahead of SB 649, I believe it was. And we did, and then the FCC pulled a fast one on us last week. But XG is here tonight. Yes, we're gonna try to run faster. XG, we have Katie Burns and also Tyler Gentry here with us tonight. It's really not an action that we need from you. We were going to put this on a work study, but you had a full docket today, so we just wanted to give you an update and kind of give you just a quick peek inside kind of what the customer facing, what the carriers will see in terms of when they're reserving infrastructure, and then also just kind of recap on some of the things that we've gone through. So with that, we do want to be respectful of council's time and keep the presentation short. So if I can ask you guys to hold questions till the end, we may be answering things as we go along. And we'll keep it concise. So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Tyler Gentry.
Hi, how you doing? I'm Tyler Gentry with XG Communities. My colleague KT Burns. Thank you, Mayor and Council, for giving us the opportunity to come and present our work that we've been working on with the City of Hemet, and a little bit about small cells and what we're seeing in deployments around the U.S. and in California specifically. Perfect. A little background. We all know just about everybody has a cell phone. More importantly, the capabilities of the cell phone are growing exponentially. It's really becoming a data-driven network and marketplace. So we're seeing exponential growth of the data usage on a network that was built for voice and text. And so that's where we're seeing the need for what they call small cells to come in and fill in the gaps for coverage for the data, so data coverage gaps and data capacity. We're really seeing, we've seen state law passed across the U.S., some federal actions. Obviously, California saw SB 649 last year, ended up getting vetoed by the governor. But what we've seen, what we try to do with the cities that we work with is really create a process that's predictable and transparent for the carriers, but also predictable and projectable for the cities, so that you can adequately resource staff time and other resources in order not to become overwhelmed with either influx of applications or onerous requirements, or even a carrier coming in and asserting some sort of shot clock right, or different federal regulations, federal or state regulation rights. What we do know is, local government can't prohibit the installation of wireless facilities within the public right-of-way based on their utility status and off of federal regulation, but local governments can control the time, place, and manner by which that they do deploy. All right, so a little bit about small cells. Small cell is a broad term that covers the new installations that we'll be talking about tonight. Typically, we see them on street lights or smaller monopoles that kind of look like a street light. Usually consists of one small antenna on the top and a radio unit on the back. Radio units usually around the size of a backpack. The cell itself actually refers to the propagation range. So as it suggests, the propagation range of a small cell is fairly limited, somewhere between 100 feet to 300 feet, maybe expanding a little bit further depending on the equipment, the spectrum used. But the thought behind this is actually adding data capacity to the current network. So what we've seen for 4G is an exponential growth and explosion of data usage. As we transition to 5G, we absolutely need a network that can handle even more exponential use. And for different technologies coming out from smart city technologies, driverless cars, integrated everything, basically a data backhaul system, a data network is going to be essential for all these new technologies, Internet of Things devices to adequately operate. All right, benefits of the small cell program. We've gone over some of this already. It's really about forecasting, what the city should expect. It's about creating a streamlined and reliable process so that city staff doesn't get absolutely slammed with these applications or requirements as they come in. Really, what we like to do with city staff is create some sort of template process, template design standards, that they can work off of. And what we usually do with our cities is hold some sort of workshop with staff, anybody that be touching an application, to show them, okay, this is what a typical construction drawing looks like. These are the engineering standards that we've seen successfully deployed against. And this is what you can have your city staff or plan check individual mark against. Basically, create a checklist for them to checks this off. 120 mile per hour structure or wind load standard, fits within the design guidelines. And then let's see here. Yep, and also what we try to do with our cities, with the small cell program that we do implement, is try to make sure that you are complying with the state and federal regulations that basically the carriers would assert their rights against. So making sure that everything's future-proof, that you do still have the protections, all the protections that you're afforded, but also that you're not getting yourself into hot water or any sort of gray area. All right. So these are a few different small cell solutions that we've seen in cities that we've that we're the client of, or that they're our client. These are actually in Sacramento. The one on the right is AT&T. The one on the left is Verizon there. They're somewhat unique in that they've been utilizing 2 radio units, and they are kind of hard to see in this projection here, but they're on the pole about halfway, maybe a little bit less than halfway down. Those are the radio units, and then on top sits that antenna. And everything's shrouded in either a box or an antenna, kind of a radome, and then all wiring is drilled into the pole. So that you're not, having different things hanging out there. It gets a little bit disruptive. But these are 2 solutions for Verizon and AT&T. These next 2 here are Sprint and T-Mobile. The one on the right is Sprint. Looks a little different than the other ones in that they have 1 radio unit, but they do have wireless backhaul capability for some of their sites. And that's that smaller unit on there above the backpack. And again, with the antenna on top, and then T-Mobile there on the left, they have even smaller equipment arrangement for most of their deployments. We have seen Crown Castle is the one that usually comes in with T-Mobile for most cities we've worked with, and they have a few different variations, but this seems to be the one that we've been presented with the most. So as you can see, fairly slimline, fairly, you wouldn't really notice it as you were driving by unless you knew that site was there. And that's what we really look to achieve when we're developing out our design standards, is something that looks more like integration to the pole, would match something that public safety might be putting up, or anything else that might be mounted to one of these poles, and we do encourage the use of any banners or signs as an additional screening method. So if a radio unit were to be proposed, this one actually is off to the side of the banner, but typically we like to, if possible, put it behind a banner or sign, so an additional screening method so the public wouldn't normally see it. So the one on the right here is a standard that the city of LA has been using, commonly referred to as BSL design. Again, kind of integrated radio unit with the antenna on top. This one's a little bit more of a, everything all together, packaged together type look. And then the one on the left is actually 5G installation in the city of Sacramento by Verizon. So next we'll go over some visualizations from data tests just to show you the need in the city of Hemet. This first slide right here is showing you the current city of Hemet owned streetlights. Obviously you guys own quite a few. So that's typically what we've been seeing carriers use to fill in with these data coverage, either gaps or where they're going to project future need. So the first one, this is one carrier that actually has pretty good coverage throughout the city of Hemet. But as you can see, all carriers want to be green everywhere. They want to provide their customers with optimal speeds that they can offer. As you can see, there's definitely a lot of areas throughout the city where they weren't able to achieve that. And we'll show you some more carriers down the line that get even worse. This one, obviously, not so great coverage anywhere, data capacity anywhere. Basically, we won't say the names of any of these carriers, not on public record at least, but as you can see, if you were a customer of theirs, you probably wouldn't be very happy in the city of Hemet. Again, another carrier, a little bit, somewhat in between of the other two, as you get a little bit on the outskirts, running into some data issues. And lastly, this carrier obviously is well beyond the coverage and capacity of everybody else. But what this really shows is along these different roads where this drive test was done, you guys have pretty good coverage with city streetlights. And that's really the thought that the carriers are coming in and trying to utilize these as a predictable and projectable method that they can start building off their small cell network off of and their infrastructure investments. So right here, we were going to do a site selects demonstration for you guys, but we didn't have it uploaded onto here. Basically, this is our reservation format that we partner with the city to upload all the city-owned streetlights or other assets that they would like to market out. That's one of our main services, is marketing these assets out. We upload it to our website. It serves kind of like a StubHub or Ticketmaster, where you can go on. It shows you a view, almost like the seats on the StubHub or Ticketmaster. You click on the available asset that fits within your search ring, your propagation range that you're hoping to solve the issue for. It will pop up information on, pole ID, type of pole, height, any other information that the city would like to have included in there. Sometimes it's available conduit, available fiber to the pole, so you can leverage, some of your additional assets as a additional leasing option. But then the carrier can then go right in and market it or reserve it, and then can get started with the site license project.
Good question. Are more than one carrier allowed on a pole?
So currently, there really aren't a whole lot of, well, not a whole lot of, we haven't seen it out in the wild basically yet where carriers are able to end up on one streetlight as is. There are different types of poles out there that companies like American Tower and other companies are, trying to get out there and sell and market that would be able to host multiple carriers. We haven't seen a great solution that carriers have really bought into on a wide scale yet. For a few different reasons. Partially, they have to have different radio units to operate on their different bands. So it'd just be a lot of equipment up on the pole, which then obviously gets you structural integrity, doesn't look very good. The other thing is access to the equipment. So if maintenance needed to happen, you had to power down the entire pole. One carrier might start playing games, that type of deal. So
I was hoping that wasn't an option.
yeah. So it's not an option currently. There are some models being floated out there. Some new equipment coming out that we think will be able to handle co-location with one radio unit, maybe one antenna, but we haven't really seen it on a wide scale just yet.
Great, thanks.
So I've got
Move on from the site flex demonstration that obviously didn't quite happen, but
I've got a quick question on power consumption
yes.
on these units. Obviously, they're going on light poles, and these light poles are paid for, the electricity is paid through lighting districts.
Mm-hmm.
So the taxpayers that are paying these, are they paying the bill? Or
No, they're not. So per Southern California Edison requirements, they actually have to run a new power service to the point of service. So they have a separate, not metered line because they're qualified for a wireless flat rate, but they have to run a separate service.
Is there a way that that might be able to be streamlined so that, run it off of the same power and then have the leasing fee cover the lighting?
So,
as well?
it's a...
So that those lighting districts can be taken off of tax rolls?
It would be great, and there's some cities that are exploring this type of option per Southern California Edison standards. There's not really that option just yet, and also I believe there is some California PUC issues about resale of power and who can do that and then what type of rates you can charge. So I think, I forgot what city it was, they were looking at possibly petitioning the CPUC to create some sort of rate around that, but they also had their own municipal power company. And so they were able to at least have a little bit more flexibility on that side, whereas Southern California Edison kind of has a little bit more of a handle on what standards they provide, and everybody kind of has to fall within those.
Well, since we're looking at going with a CCA, that's something that maybe we can take a look at.
Yeah.
As far as our,
definitely.
maybe that could be part of the leasing that can help,
And,
help reduce taxes.
That solution, if that solution were to come up, honestly, the carriers would probably love it because currently they're having to run power to the closest point of service, which it can cost anywhere from a couple $100s to, $10,000, $15,000 if it's very far away.
Well, not to mention that these are low power consumption.
Yes.
We're switching out our lights to LED, and those are super low.
Yep.
So I think that I'm not an electrical engineer or anything, but I would think that there might be able to.
It definitely would be a great solution if it works out. We can explore it a little bit more. We'll talk a little bit more about that offline and see if we can work something out with that, and we'll bring our in-house counsel, and they can talk us through the regulations around it as well. All right, and then the next steps with the City of Hemet, now with the acquisition of the streetlights from SCE, is really to get to the point of loading the sites onto SiteFlex, our reservation platform, and then taking in applications with the city and working on getting these things deployed, but deployed in a responsible and efficient manner.
Very good, thank you.
No, you're good. And just to add on to that, so the inventory map that you saw was strictly city-owned. So as we go through this process with SCE for the acquisition of the other 1,700 lights, XG Communities actually already has kind of our first draft of that. So we're just waiting to own them to press the button to light up those other locations as well. So hopefully, with any luck at all, will be maybe by early November, be owners of those lights. So,
Terrific.
yeah.
Will the template be brought back to council for approval before anybody starts installing? So that we can
In terms of like the standards for what things look like,
for what they look like and where they're going to be.
Yes, let's start with the standards.
Okay.
So each carrier, and I'm going to ask the two of you, please correct me, just kick me in the knee or something if Each carrier kind of has, as you saw, kind of their own setup, similar but different. And so I think that one of the goals for XG is to say, okay, AT&T, show us what it is that you want to put up. We'll bring those standards back to us and say, yeah, we're good with it, or it fits within these parameters, and then tell them this is what you need to hold to when you come with all of your applications. So the equipment itself might look a little different for each carrier, obviously, but if it kind of fits within the parameters that we've established that are acceptable, it won't be a situation where every single location by any means comes here, because we're talking hundreds potentially. But in terms of a general, look, we don't want them in downtown Hemet, we don't want them on Harvard, or we don't want them in certain areas. I think that we can talk through those pieces, because we've been talking about that from the beginning. There are definitely areas where we might want to look at a different type of facility to accommodate them with, or just say, not here. So we will, as those big decisions kind of come around, conceptually, come back definitely to council for approval. So
You had mentioned that their range, the small cell range, is like 100 to 300 feet?
Yeah, so it really depends on the equipment configuration.
Because you could have something on every pole in town. And
Exactly. I've heard carriers say up to even 300 yards at times. So it's really about the current data capacity of the. Oh yeah, sorry. About the current data capacity of the network and data need zone. So usually a heavier density area will require 1 to maybe 3 small cells around in, say a block, around the corner. Every carrier might want one right around here. But areas that are adequately covered and have adequate capacity from a existing macro tower, they won't want to place one over here, because then it's an unneeded investment, basically.
Okay, so this is basically to add to their capacity,
Yeah.
because their big towers are going to get changed to 5G?
So there's going to be a definite evolution from 4G to 5G. They're going to keep, as all the evolutions 2G to 3G, they definitely keep 4G online for quite a while. And it's usually a thing that starts in big markets, then trickles out to some of the smaller markets. So the plan, I'm sure, would be to swap to 5G. It's just years now at this point.
Okay, thank you.
So just to make sure that I'm clear on what this is offering, you're talking about data capacity and not necessarily signal strength coverage.
Not necessarily, yes. So it's really, the solution's really about data for the small cells. Now for voice, there's different concepts out there where I think the carriers are exploring different options where they might be able to work voice over data to, increase some of the coverage and the performance. But currently this is really just about data capacity and, basically what we use our phones for every day, from using apps to Google Maps or whatever the case is.
So, go ahead.
I was just going to chime in on that very quick. So for us as a city, we have public safety that runs around, right, with their laptops. We have our public works guys who are doing real-time data entry on their iPads. This is really going to help improve, particularly in those areas where we lose connectivity and then have to, come back and double do the work, right? Now we're writing stuff down and we're back to old school. So I know for public safety and for public works that once we get there, that this is going to be a great improvement for us in terms of that, having
So
that
in our
data
previous
capacity.
study session, we heard that there was a problem of our fire engine MDCs not necessarily always capturing their rollout time. And so this technology would likely enhance our ability to get more accurate data from those MDCs.
It potentially could. I mean, it's really depending on the type of technology that's deployed and the network that it's operating off of. Basically, to achieve a real adequate rollout of a small cell network. One, you need the antenna and the radio unit, but then you also need the backhaul portion of that. So that means fiber investment, conduit investment, and so any sort of smart city technology, public safety technology upgrades, things like that are probably going to be running off of the network that's going to be put in place here. So it's lending itself to giving you guys the proper infrastructure to build and upgrade upon.
And would, right now we're talking about city-owned streetlights. Would a private property owner who has, say, streetlights in a shopping center parking lot, would they be eligible to pursue getting that kind of
Definitely.
hardware on their private property?
So it depends on city standards and city, what city's putting out there if they're going to allow that. Typically, that's going to require some sort of permit or maybe zoning because it's changed to the existing use. But it is something that carriers have used to solve issues if there isn't a city asset nearby and they really need this portion of the area covered. It's something that they've pursued on rooftops, on different other options, but as a blanket solution, city-owned streetlights being closer to user, being quite a few of them along the streets and in the most densely populated areas, that's the best solution for them. That's what they try to pursue on a grand scale.
Thank you.
Ultimately, this is going to be to set up guidelines for the wireless carriers putting their equipment on our property to get them better coverage, which then in turn gives us better coverage, everybody that uses the phone. Very good.
Just as a final piece, so Katie and Tyler, after this, we gave them permission to go ahead and put a press release out and notify the carriers that we're ready to start talking. So we are going to get a copy of that press release probably tomorrow, and I will get that to the city manager. Mayor, if you'd like to make a statement in it, or if we wanted to add anything the city manager did, we can. Okay?
Very good.
Great.
I'm going to express my stupidity at this point. Is 5G going to replace what we use for public safety communications now? The reason I'm asking is the city is in need of about $2 million of new hardware for communications, antennas, etc., to accept the revisions to the Riverside County system, etc. Is 5G set up to be an alternative to that? Because the question I'm really asking is, do I need to spend the $2 million now?
I would say probably do need to spend it. It's not necessarily an alternative to it. It's going to be more of an enhancement to it. And what we're seeing for 5G right now in its current deployment in places like Los Angeles and Sacramento, it's really on a testing scale, and then also they're doing some to-the-home internet type service, internet providing, but they haven't deployed it for handsets yet, and that's still probably mid to late next year for most carriers, any sort of handset that has any 5G capability, and then you also have to be in a place with a significant enough 5G infrastructure. So it's years out probably still for the city of Hemet. But 4G, enhanced data capacity, data speeds are the applications that we'd be seeing right away. I know. Sorry.
Not the answer you wanted.
Does 4G have the capability to be upgraded to public safety?
Yes, but it's probably more of an enhancement on the current capabilities that you're probably going to be spending the investment on. It's really just going to be about enhancing the speeds that you're operating on, rather than the actual equipment.
When it's a different system,
Yes.
too, correct?
Yeah.
All right. All right, thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
But before you go on, this was a discussion item, so is there anybody from the public who wishes to speak on this item? Seeing none, thank you. All right, thank you. Okay. Up next, easement agreement with the Western Center Community Foundation, City Attorney Dale.
Mayor and council members, this item was previously before you. The easement was approved by the city council with a term out to January 1, 2103, which would have been an 85-year term. When we sent that back to the WCCF, they pointed out that they have a lease that covers part of their pylon sign with MWD. That is for 99 years with two 25-year extensions. They requested that we essentially provide language that would give them a 150-year term. We said, fine, we'll put it in the agreement and we'll bring it back to council. That is the only material term. You do have a red line that tracks all of the changes that were made between the license agreement and the easement. The only thing that is different in the agreement in front of you today is the extension of the term. It'll go beyond 2103 up to and including however long their lease and the two 25-year extensions if they exercise them within WDGO. So it just puts the two on parity so their pylons, they don't have to worry about different times for different parts of their pylons on. I can answer any of your questions, but otherwise that's about the size of what we have here.
So if we kept it the way it is, our term would end before the other term, and we would have to take their pylon off, and it would have to be
Possibly,
a one-way
yeah.
standing. Okay. Any questions for the city attorney?
I have a few questions. This agreement is with WCCF, and I believe that the three entities are paying for it. So how is that not a loophole? I don't know.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand your
So
question.
WCCF, that's
Yes.
who this agreement is with, right? And it doesn't address it in this staff report, but in the staff report from August 28th, it talks about the three agencies purchasing the sign.
We're paying for the construction of the sign?
Right. So who's the owner of the sign going to be if there's...
What we've been told is the operating entity will be WCCF, which is the one that will construct and hold the sign. That's why we have the easement agreement with WCCF. And so we'll hold WCCF responsible if there's a problem with the sign.
But the landowner is MWD?
We own part of it, the other part is MWD, correct?
Right, so if, like, all parties aren't named, I just don't know how that's not leaving us open for something, because we're good at that.
Well, we don't need to name MWD because we don't have a contractual relationship with them. They have a relationship with WCCF for their part. We have one for our part.
Okay, and the other question that I have about this, and this is just upon doing more research on easements and signs, it says on here that they may allow advertisement of city-sponsored events at their sole discretion. And if that's kind of like we're giving free rent and they're going to decide if they are going to advertise our events. My other question is, and this is kind of just like a long thing, I guess, a list of questions, but are they going to be leasing out advertisements, like taking sponsorships? Because, the average amount of money that can be made on a sign like that is, starts at $2,000 a month.
That I can't answer. The business terms for the lease were provided by Community Development Director, and bring her up to ask that question.
I know that, in most cities, if there's going to be a lease agreement, I mean, where do we get into the gift of public funds if they're going to make money on sponsorships?
My understanding, good evening, council members, is that the sole purpose of the sign is to advertise the events that are occurring on the property by the Western Science Center, the Academy, Valleywide, and MWD. And it is limited to those types of events. We did ask, or staff did ask, that if there was a public emergency or an Amber Alert or something like that they could promote that on the sign as well as a public safety. And then we asked about, well, what if we had a community event that was the city-sponsored? And I think they have the same kind of concerns that maybe you're expressing as far as how far is that going to go into some of their advertising and how direct. So that's why we wrote the language that it could be, but that they still retained the ability as to whether to accept that. But it is supposed to be for nonprofit, not commercial advertising.
Well, I mean, let's just look, for example, we're going to have a big baseball tournament out there. My kids play baseball. At baseball tournaments, they're sponsors. And if they're going to be sponsored now at Diamond Valley Lake at the baseball fields, they have higher sponsorship rates because now we have LED signs out front. So the sponsors could pay more money, and then we can have all of the sponsors get 30 seconds on the sign. Do you see where I'm going with this?
I do. I certainly do.
And none of that's covered in this.
As far as I know, that was never the intention. It was just to advertise the events, but it doesn't specifically.
It doesn't address it, and so we're going to lock in 200 years with no intentions, and it'll just be like our free water. At least, I just think that it's something that, as a city, I mean, our generosity sitting up here is going to kill us. We all want to give and give and give, and we're not looking at our best interests of the city. And I'm not trying to be stingy, but we're not in a place to be giving away money. I mean, even there's an article in Western City, we all get that in our boxes, from 2016, and it talks about using this type of a situation to benefit the city. And we don't need to make a ton of profit on it, but
perhaps
I don't know why nobody looked at that, but I feel bad for bringing it up right now.
Well, perhaps the city attorney, in looking at section 3, advertisements, the first sentence says the message area of the sign is intended to advertise messages for the benefit of the public agencies and the 501c3 nonprofit organizations located at Diamond Valley Lake. And I think we thought that language
Right,
was
so we're all
constrained enough.
we're advertising Valley-wide's, memorial baseball tournament, and it's going to honor somebody that passed away, and all the sponsors are, and, we can have all of these different businesses can have a certain amount of time on the LED sign and pay a premium dollar for it, all in the name of under a nonprofit. And so I just want to make sure that we are not giving away the farm again. We're good at that.
The easement doesn't provide an express prohibition against selling advertisements to nonprofits, nor does it include an express prohibition against selling advertisements to private entities. It says that the intention is to benefit public agencies, but that language wouldn't prohibit what you're suggesting, that they can sell advertising. So if it is...
So would we get in trouble for, a gift of public funds if somebody's making $100,000, $500,000 a year?
No, because part of the intent of this is to support the Western Science Center through the pylon sign. And if they did make money and it went to the Western Science Center, we can donate money to the Western Science Center, and we have over the years, and that's not a gift of public funds. But if the council does have a reservation about them charging for advertisement costs, we would have to go back to them and negotiate that.
I understand that, and I know that it's, it's a little late, but it's, you start looking at the details of, what other cities do in this type of, and we're just behind the 8 ball again. And we just want to give it away because we're nice and we like the Science Center, and I get it. But we have to think about the business aspect of our city, too.
Just out of curiosity on that topic, what's the practicality of doing some kind of supplemental or rider agreement that specifically addresses that from everybody's perspective and potential benefit?
I wouldn't suggest a supplement or a rider. We would just change section 3 if the council's concerned about it. I'm sorry, but I can't give you full answers to that question. I wasn't part of the negotiating team or the discussions. I just put the easement together in the form of what I thought the real property document needed to be to accomplish that. So if the council wants to go back and renegotiate that, we haven't signed or approved this yet, you certainly can do that. I can't say it's not a valid concern. I would say the one difference here is that we're just giving them the easement area for the purposes of maintaining the sign, as opposed to entering into an agreement where we intend this to be a lease revenue generating situation. Like I know some cities do, especially where you see along the freeway signs, they've got a lease to generate revenue because they do it private advertisement for that. But it's a fair comment. There is no prohibition on private advertisement or charging money for the advertisement. If that's a concern, you might want to send us back and address that.
Any other comments? Is that something that should be looked at? Deanna, were you part of the negotiation team on drafting this easement agreement?
That might be a little strong saying negotiation. It was more the request, and what we were looking at was consistency with the Diamond Valley specific plan, and the sign regulations and what it looked like, and all of those kinds of components, as well as the legal aspect of an easement were included in it. I didn't ask that specific question as to how far intent to support went, and if that would be a commercial message or advertising. All of my discussions with the proponents associated with the sign were geared towards advertising of events sponsored by, there was never any discussion of a commercial message. But they're not, I can't speak for them either if there was some.
Is there anybody here from the Western Center that can speak on that?
Can we just ask that question? Let's just ask that question.
Yeah.
Find out.
Okay.
And what do we do with the answer? They say there's going to be commercial advertising and they make money, then what do we do? True. Well, what's common, like in the stuff that I've, right, like some of the things that I read about, like some will say like you can make like a small percentage or $1,000, whatever's less, or you can make up your own language for it, but then it's not just nothing.
Well, but then again, all we did was provide an easement. We didn't contribute to the
10 feet of the easement. They couldn't have those.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't have a problem. Ask the question. Just ask the question.
Okay.
And
You're right. I don't know what the answer will be. I mean, I don't know what we do with the answer, but.
And while you're at it,
Will give us the ability that if we send over a message we want to put up, then they put it up.
yeah, I think you should add on there that, the city events need to be on there. It's not like if they feel like it.
sign.
Well, it can scroll through. I mean, it's an LED, it changes.
It's big, yeah.
To add a number of events on, I guess. I don't know.
Well, Christmas parade. I mean, not like that big of a deal. It's maybe something like that. It wouldn't be on all the time. It would be like the blip in the roll, Easter egg roll and Christmas parade and 4th of July parade and something like that. While you're at it, at page, I don't know what page it is because all of these are different. Amendment, number 16, where it says amendments. It says no amendment to or modification of this agreement shall be valid unless made in writing and approved by City Council, WCCF, period. Doesn't make, so I don't know what the intent was, who it's approved by, because there's a lot of strikeouts in that one.
Yeah.
You clarified that.
I'll go back and check.
That's what happens when you read these things.
Right.
if the primary consideration, because I know there's a number of different topics that were just discussed, if the primary consideration is whether they will or will not allow commercial advertising separate, I can, as a suggestion, just to move things along, if the council chose to table it, I can try and contact them to get that answer and let you know. But if you have a number of other concerns, then that's not going to be as simple.
I think that adding city-sponsored events is just kind of like a give and take too.
Yeah, what I heard from council is that you want a specific guaranteed slot for city PSAs or city events. And you either want limiting language that says that they're not going to make a profit off of the sign. It will be a larger discussion because they have the sign costs $300 and some thousand to construct.
Yeah, if they're a nonprofit, they can't make a profit.
Is the council asking for a percentage of the profit, a limit on the profit, a prohibition against private business advertisements on the sign? You're going to have to give me us a little more direction on.
You could do a percentage or a flat rate, or you can do a either or, whatever's less. I mean, it could be open for negotiation.
We have to remember, too, that this is a nonprofit organization.
Right.
They're not a for-profit company. So.
Mhm.
I would like to see an inclusion of city events.
Okay. But otherwise not a prohibition on.
I wouldn't prohibit them from advertising those things. If they're going to get money for it, then I think that there needs to be some sort of, lease on that.
Council, I'm going to need you to give me direction on what to ask for. I mean, if we're going to ask for a percentage, then either the city manager or I or Deanna need some kind of direction on whether the council does or does not want that, and if so, you're going to give us authority to determine what kind of percentage is appropriate, a flat fee.
So this is a discussion item. I know there's somebody that would like to speak on this item, so if we could hear from them before we give final direction.
Thanks, Mayor. Howard Tunget. A couple things that I'd like to see in this, a lot of the events that held at that facility, Valleywide, rents those to for-profit companies. So I'm not sure if the language could add that. And again, I think your language in that is for nonprofits can advertise on there. But again, are these events just limited to that site that they're going to advertise on? Because knowing how Valleywide does their stuff, they'll be advertising the Autumn Elegance, the weekend, all kinds of other events throughout the community, but they'll advertise them on that billboard. So, and there are three owners of this sign. Valleywide and Metropolitan are also paying a third of their cost of it. So, again, a lot of the people that rent those ball fields are for profit. They charge $650 per team.
Thank you, sir. Is there anybody else that would like to speak on this item? All right, seeing none. Bring it back to council. So you need more direction then, Eric?
We'll go back and ask for a specific time slot for city PSAs and city events. And we'll ask the question about what type of revenue they plan to make or generate from the sign. What I need is direction on whether the city, wants a flat fee or a percentage of that revenue as compensation for the easement. It was our original direction that this was just to support the Western Science Center, but it is completely within your purview to ask for compensation, regardless of whether they are a nonprofit group.
And it was our understanding that it was just going to advertise their stuff, but you start thinking about what their stuff is, and you start looking into it, and they could do all this, and it's not limited. And I think that an answer tonight might be a little hasty, but for us to be open to negotiate a percentage or a flat fee, I mean, we're not trying to rob them, but we have to make wise use of our public land too.
Any other comments?
They should have input on it, not just...
Russ? Linda? Bonnie?
Well, I think, what we've stumbled onto is a departure, I think, from the original objective of facilitating getting the sign up for the center. Although some of the points are well taken, and I would think just from simplicity's sake, to keep it fair, that some reasonable percentage